Okay, so exam 3 covers modules 8, 9, and 10, as well as it has a memo on it. Okay, so module 8 focused on CCH. I mean, there were some other topics as well, but really the big focus is CCH and teleconnect. Now, there's only a few questions on the exam from this specific topic. I just want to focus on which slides, which elements, and what exactly the questions are going to be like. So some of the questions deal just with the tax research process that we've been talking about throughout the semester, the different types of searches. Others are like specific to CCH. So the specific services they provide versus, like the tax research consultant, the master tax guide, because we learned checkpoint most of the semester and we focused on things like the federal tax coordinator and AFTR versus USTC for CCH. So this slide just focuses on using CCH for research. Again, the questions of the exam are going to be pretty general. There's some specific things related to CCH I wanted to bring to your attention. This one's important because, as I said, you might have the 4 different ways to research again. Just remembering those types of concepts, because that applies to any type of research tool. You should always know that, right? You have the keyword search, content search, index search, citation search. Very important. So databases. This one is just generally speaking about databases like annotated versus topical databases. CCH and Teleconnect has their own databases, and I'm going to focus on their different services they have. So CCH and Teleconnect, there's a few slides on here that go through the actual opening screen and some the organization of the actual platform, whatnot. That's obviously not as important on the exam, but obviously it's very important for practice. So this is what CCH looks like. Here's just some general primary source materials that we already know. Again, they're specifically in CCH just like they're in Checkpoint. Continuation of the primary source materials. All right, so this is a very important slide. Now we're getting to stuff specific to CCH. So the tax research consultant is the flagship editorial content by CCH. It's the equivalent of the federal tax coordinator for Checkpoint. So make sure you know about that. There's also the standard federal tax reporter that is specific to CCH. So this shows you kind of the organization of the tax research consultant. You've got the different aspects broken down, and of course it says tax research consultant. Master tax guide is also another one of the tools by CCH. So this continues down with an annotated organization of a standard federal tax reporter. So illustrative examples that walk you through CCH, that's what the next few slides deal with. Remember that when you're looking at the Boolean and proximity connectors, which we also dealt with in Checkpoint, there might be some that are different from CCH than Checkpoint. Now, I'm not going to test you on these, but I just want to bring your attention in practice. You can always, when you're looking in whatever tax research database you're dealing with, there's always an area that brings up these connectors. So it gives you, just in case you're doing something wrong, maybe you're using a Checkpoint connector in CCH. So here's an index search using the tax research consultant window. Content search. Citation search. Citators. So please do remember the importance of citators. Remember, citators is what we use to check the tax law. Remember, tax law is constantly revised. So a citator can be used to verify, hey, has a ruling or case been issued, modified, superseded, revoked, made obsolete by tax laws, whatever it is. Same with cases, we can do the same thing. overruled by other case, appealed, affirmed, whatever it is. So what is a citator? Right? It reports the history of the legal source of primary authority. When is a citator used? Again, it's used to check if a case or a piece of law is still relevant to a client's tax issue. Here's a definition of citing case. Cited, and you do need to remember these, very important for any database. Citing is a judicial case decision that refers to another judicial case decision. Cited case is a judicial case decision that has been referenced in another decision. What type of information does a citator contain? It provides various things, all mentioned here. So here's where the CCH citator is. Remember, you don't go to the citation element up here. You go to the citator element at the top. So here are some other things that CCH has specifically. You've got taxes, the tax magazine. Actually, I was working on a tax research project the other day, professional article, not a memo, just a professional article on a specific topic. And I noticed that there's a recent article, Taxes, Tax Magazine, that I actually have to take a look at in the next few days. So I'm excited about that, but that's specifically something in CCH. Okay, so before we go into the top 40 tax doctrines, so that's CCH. Again, the questions on the exam from CCH are going to be very general, relate to the types of citators, or the services provided, specific to CCH. So make sure you know those, and I highlighted the things you need to focus on. But make sure you go through that, and you can always go through the homework questions that are assigned. I have those posted to get a better idea. So that's one part of the exam in terms of the objective questions. Another part is Module 9. Module 9, we went and we talked about the weights of authority, and we specifically focused in Module 9 on administrative authority and judicial authority. Now, earlier in the semester, we had chapters that focused on these topics. And you'll find in Module 9, I have practice questions that go back over these topics. So there are 5 questions, 5 objective questions on the exam that deal with administrative, like revenue rulings, regulations, rev procs, private letter rulings, right? Those types of things. And there's 5 judicial, right? Cases, the trial court, lower court, Supreme Court, those types of things. The questions are not as detailed as they were for exam 2. However, you still need to go back over those. Okay, those materials. So if you need to go back to the previous chapter, the module to read that stuff, or just go right to the practice questions and focus on that, whatever you need to do. The questions aren't as difficult. There might be some questions on citation, on weight of authority, definitions, or what specific types are, like what's a private letter ruling, it's technical advice memorandum, chief counsel advice. You still need to remember those things, right? The different levels of court cases, the different reporters for the cases, official versus unofficial. Those are some of the types of questions you might see on the exam. So make sure you go back over that. Again, the key though is that it's not going to be as detailed as you had on previous exams. All right, so that makes up the some of the questions from Module 8 and Module 9 on the exam. There's also Module 10, which is the tax doctrines, right? Top 40 tax doctrines. So there's 40 tax doctrines you need to know and practice. These are some of the most important ones. There's other ones out there, but you need to focus on these for my exam. Now, I have some practice questions that give you examples of types of questions you might be able to see, various types. Please go through that. I also have a video that covers the top 40 tax doctrines. With respect to the exam, there were some tax doctrines that I really focused on more than others. I would focus on those. So when you go back in your notes or the videos, the types of questions I can ask on the exam, and they're mainly the questions are true-false, are going to be the 5 general income tax questions, right? Like true and false. The acceleration of income doctrine deals with the when question. That would be false because it deals, the central issue is more about the character, right? Remember we talked about ordinary income. I mean, I guess for this one, that's not a good example. I won't say acceleration of income. Accounting method definition. Accounting method definition, we know the accounting method, the main thing for accounting method is when, right? Of the 5 questions, when. If I ask you true or false, the accounting method definition, the main of the 5 questions, 5 income tax questions, the main question, central question is, I don't know, do we have income altogether? The answer would be false, because it's the when question. So that's one of the types of questions I could ask. So 5 general questions. I could just ask you in general about the different doctrines themselves. So just what they are, right? What they deal with and what they are. So just like kind of a definitional idea of the questions. I could ask you a hypothetical fact pattern with respect to what applies. So maybe I have a Section 1245 recapture issue, which would be an example of the Aerosmith doctrine, right? Someone's going to sell business property, they've been depreciating, right? And they have to worry about recapturing because they took depreciation, ordinary income. It would be Section 1231. That would be an example of Aerosmith. So hypothetical fact patterns, true or false, whether this one applies or does not apply. And by the way, when you do those hypothetical fact pattern questions, usually the way I address them, if it's false, it means that there's another doctrine that would apply of the 40 doctrines. That's how I write it. Also, interrelationships. And I got a question from a student about this. Like, how exactly do we need to know the interrelationships? Do we need to know every single case out there potentially, or every single code section or doctrine? Just the ones that are mentioned either in the video that I went over or in class, the notes, or what's mentioned actually in the write-up part of the top 40 tax doctrines. So just read the little paragraph of what it actually says. Those are really the types of questions I can ask, okay? So just go through the different doctrines in the video and focus on those actual elements. I'm not going to go through those because the video itself walks you through those aspects. I just want to give you kind of the types of questions you might see. The last thing I want to mention is, again, the exam is broken into half objective, true, false, multiple choice. The other half of the question, or other half of the exam, my apologies, is a memo. So this memo is going to be more like memo 1 in terms of the amount of facts, the size and the writing, and the style. More like memo 1, right? We kind of started the semester with memo 1, how to write memo video. We go back to that. So if you want to practice, go back to how to write a memo, that video. And you can review all the memos you've done in this class, memo 1, 2, 3, or whatever memos there are, and take the takeaways from them to get a good idea. And you can use all those skills because I'll be taking into account those elements when I actually grade the memos, okay? The way I grade is again, look at the class overall as a whole, and I kind of put them together. So, I mean, there will be students who get hundreds, but I generally grade pretty leniently when it comes to the memos, just because it's all so similar to Memo 1, and by the time we get to Memo 3, most students have done very well. I try to stick to a very generic issue because, again, just like this class, some students might have taken a tax course before where it focused on business taxation or other types of tax that other students didn't have. So generally, it might be like a question like, is this included in gross income? Is this deductible? Can we deduct this? Those types of questions, right? I try to stay away from the when question, the who question, character. I know we've done those in other memos, but I try to stay away from those. Those are a little bit more advanced. With respect to this, you're allowed, it's open book, open note. You can bring books, you have to bring your computer, right? Bring your computer to the actual memo itself. And please bring a power cord, okay? Because you need to complete on your computer. You need to submit with respect to the memo. Other advice, just go back over your memos. Again, I told you about how to write a memo video. Specifically focus on memo 1, maybe the things I told you or I told the class in general. You can always come by office hours, and I'll be happy to address any issues you have. That's really everything. I mean, just use the skills you kind of acquired throughout the semester and with respect to the memo itself. It's going to be a pretty short fact pattern. I've already written it up. Also an interesting fact pattern. Again, you don't have to use Checkpoint. You can use CCH if you want. You can use Checkpoint. You can use Google. You probably want to use checkpoint to verify everything is still the law, though, because there might be some changes in the law. So you just want to check that at least at a minimum. Okay? And again, it's really been written so that you have plenty of time to do it. I mean, it's still going to be, for some people, it might be a little time pressured. I would say a reasonable amount of time to do the memo is an hour and a half, but I'm going to give you 2 hours to do the memo. Okay? So in terms of looking at the previous memos, right, as I mentioned, it's the most similar to Memo 1. So Memo 1 was pretty evenly split with code and regs versus cases and non, or like there was a revenue, potentially maybe a revenue ruling or rev procs, or even some non-binding authority. It was pretty well split between, or among these. It wasn't like too case intensive, too code intensive. The idea that Memo 1 that was stressed though was issue spotting and kind of structure of argument. That's going to be essential to your memo. Okay, so make sure you take that into account. And you can think about, in this class, you learn about the structure of the code, the top 100 code sections. The memo is going to deal with a code section that's going to be one of the top 100. So make sure, if you want to look back at those, get an idea, you can always look back at those to get a good idea. Memo 2, we focused on two things. We focused on the path of the code, how the kind of the pieces of the puzzle fit together, right? How the code sections fit together. And we focused on factors test. These are also very important, especially how the path fits together, because it won't be as intensive as Memo 2 in terms of how everything fits together, like a big puzzle, right? Maybe rather than like a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, right? Memo 2 might be 1,000-piece. This is more like a 100-piece jigsaw puzzle. I don't even know if that's really a size of a jigsaw puzzle, but it's not going to be near as intricate as it was for Memo 2, right? Where we had crazy transactions going on. But it's still going to be important to consider the path of the code. The factors, well, there might be some cases you have to look at in your memo on this exam. And the factors test always helps with that, because it's, when you get fact intensive, it always helps with your approach. And okay, you compare and contrast facts in one case versus another, always helpful. Finally, Memo 3, almost exclusively focused on case law, just going back and forth between one side of the case versus another, right? Comparing and contrasting cases, one case versus another, how it might fit in the dichotomy between two cases and the treatment for the taxpayer. That one, I would just say that one just deals mostly with how you can use that to help with getting ready for a memo. The idea of just trying to be use as much important facts from the cases as possible to compare and contrast. Also, setting up the issues. One thing that was important with Memo 3 was setting up issues with respect to what exactly is going on. You might get some cases, a bunch of issues going on, and maybe the cases don't necessarily set it up, but you want you to organize, right? Organization is a key element. So that's really how I would focus and go back over the memos. And if you have any questions, please post on the discussion board or come to office hours. I'm more than happy to help you. But good luck on your exam. Actually, I shouldn't say good luck, because I know you all are going to do great. No luck needed.